יש מושב נוסף, היא רימון רבינוביץ. רימון תציג עבודת סמינר שכתבה יחד עם בעלה, יהושע הירש. שניהם עלו ארצה מניו יורק לפני 4 שנים. רימון היא בוגרת הפקולטה למשפטים וכן החוג לאנגלית, וכיום מתמחה ברשות המיסים. ויהושע, שהיה שותף לכתיבת עבודת הסמינר, הוא בוגר הפקולטה למשפטים ומסיים בימים אלה את ה-MBA שלו. והעבודת הסמינר שלהם עסקה במשפט אי שפיות, Lunacy trial, שהתקיים ב-1849.
The mountains about us are dark, lonely, and sad. The landscape as we saw it, the most solemn and forlorn I've ever seen. The feelings of almost terror with which, riding through the night, we approach this awful place, the center of the world's past and future history, must remain with a man as long as his memory lasts. The ghetto of Jerusalem is preeminent in filth. The people are gathered round the dung gate of the city. On a Friday, you may hear their wailings and lamentations for the lost glories of their city, the most ghastly sight I have seen in the world. These words, written by the well-known English author William Makepeace Thackeray, were written upon his arrival in 19th century Palestine. In this period, the land was largely rural, barren, and decaying, its people destitute, and its roads unsafe to all but the most daring travelers. Yet despite the clear reasons to avoid such a place, there were nonetheless those few brave souls who left the comforts of the world they had once known to make the Holy Land their home. Among this group were missionaries, pilgrims, archaeologists, biblical scholars, and the American consular officer Warder Cresson. This is his story. Born in 1798 into a prominent, wealthy Pennsylvanian family, Warder was brought up in the Quaker tradition and spent his early years in Philadelphia, working on the family farms. As he grew up, he continued these agrarian pursuits, successfully tending to his family's properties. It was during these years that Cresson acquired his foundation as an agriculturist and developed the basic skills that would serve him later on in his life. In 1821, Cresson met and married Elizabeth Townsend, also a devout Quaker. The couple's first years together are marked by a string of relocations. While it's possible that the couple moved from one Quaker township to another for innocent reasons, a historian from that period notes that already at this young age, Cresson was known as an eccentric character, constantly preaching, arguing, and irritating the local Quaker elders. Perhaps it is for this reason that the couple felt compelled to move so many times, since the local Quakers came to know him as overzealous, assertive, and argumentative. We begin to already see that Cresson had a unique personality, as well as a natural proclivity towards agitation. Furthermore, these early theological debates that he had with the Quaker elders demonstrated that his search for religious truth began at an early age. Cresson spent the better part of 1824 through 1825 laboring and building up his new property close to Philadelphia, successfully farming, cultivating, and establishing a beautiful estate for his growing family. However, despite these achievements, Cresson was unsettled by the religious status quo in which he found himself. As a manifestation of this internal unrest, he began to distance himself from the Quaker society by speaking out against their dogmas and beliefs. His actions also took on a more extreme nature. For example, one day he rode to a meeting of Quaker elders to interrupt them and speak his mind, believing, as he writes, that he was called of the Lord to visit the elders and deliver a message. However, since Cresson's reputation as an agitator had preceded him, he was not granted permission to speak. After this rejection, Cresson wrote several polemical pamphlets containing scathing diatribes against the society's beliefs and social conduct. The friction between Cresson and the society's leaders reached a crescendo in 1829, when Cresson was formally banned from the Quaker Society. Just a note about the methodology when we were writing this report. Though we began our research in Israel, most of Cresson's papers and personal things are, were preserved in America, where he was from. So, though we started here, we continued mostly abroad, and it gave us, really special opportunities to see archives there and the first-hand documents by ourselves. Not much actually remains from Cresson's early years, but we were able to map out the story of his childhood through things like this. These are These are records of the minutes from the Quaker meetings that they held monthly. And in this specific one from 1829, we see that the elders discussed Cresson's defection. You can see that they wrote specifically, Warder Cresson has for a long time declined the attendance of our religious meetings and has recently joined himself with another religious society known as the Shakers. These and all the minutes of the Quaker meetings are all housed in the Friends Historical Society at Swarthmore College. It was really interesting to be able to see them firsthand. On his path to religious truth, Cresson fell in with the Shakers, another extreme religious sect that was gaining ground in America. Though at first he believed them to be, as he wrote, the only true church of God, his stay with them did not last long. Once again, his religious leanings became too extreme, causing theological upheaval in the community. Cresson quickly fell into ill repute, and shortly after, he broke away from the Shakers as well. Little is known of Cresson's activities during the following years. However, we can surmise that as the years progressed, the religious uncertainties that had plagued him throughout his youth continued to ferment and strengthen. During this period, there were rumors of Cresson taking interest in even other religious sects, such as the Mormons, Campbellites, and Irvingites, though Cresson denied these allegations in his later writings. Meanwhile, despite the fact that his wife Elizabeth remained a devout Quaker, the couple remained together and had 4 more children at this point, making their total 6. Ultimately, Cresson's search for religious truth led him to turn his attention to the Holy Land and the plight of its displaced people, the Jews. To this end, Cresson decided to travel to Washington in order to request appointment as the first U.S. consul to Jerusalem. After several letters of recommendation arrived on his behalf, Cresson received the appointment. As he writes, in the spring of 1844, I left everything near and dear to me upon this earth. I left the wife of my youth and 6 lovely children, dearer to me than my natural life, and an excellent farm with everything comfortable around me. Despite this initial success,
Next.
Despite this initial success, a month later, U.S. Secretary of State John C. Calhoun wrote a letter to Cresson informing him that his appointment had been rescinded due to the fact that the president believed the consulate at Jerusalem to be extraneous. Though there is much uncertainty and mystery regarding this turn of events, it seems clear that the true reason for the reversal of lies lies in a scathing letter from the Secretary of the Treasury, Samuel D. Ingham, to Calhoun. Ingham writes in this letter, among other points, that Cresson has been laboring under an aberration of mind for many years. His mania is of the religious species. Regardless of the fact that many of the assertions in the letter were definitely not true, Cresson's post was rescinded. However, since Cresson had already departed on his voyage, it is unclear if this news actually ever reached him. Whether he knew of the withdrawal or not, Cresson subsequently arrived in Palestine and began acting as U.S. consul, carrying out certain official duties, including offering letters of protection. However, these actions became known to Dabney S. Carr, the American minister resident at Constantinople, who quickly informed Calhoun that Cresson was performing pretended official acts. After an angry correspondence, Cresson left his post as U.S. consul. The section of our research regarding Cresson's years as U.S. consul was based largely on a series of correspondence between Cresson and other heads of state that are today found in the National Archives in Washington. And again, we had the chance to see them firsthand, so that was really interesting. This is an example. This is an example of the letter that Calhoun received. That Calhoun wrote to Cresson regarding his appointment. In addition to talking about the religious mania, he writes, in truth, Cresson is with all a very weak-minded man, and his mind, what there is of it, quite out of order. He is extensively known, and the appointment is made a theme of ridicule by all who know him. During and after this affair, Cresson began to develop a growing affinity for Judaism throughout his stay in Palestine. After much confrontation with the Christian missionaries who he encountered there, Cresson soon became dedicated to the idea of reestablishment and revitalization of the Holy Land. To this end, he converted to Judaism under the auspices of the rabbinic court in Jerusalem in March of 1848 and changed his name to Michael Boaz Israel. As was already becoming a pattern within, though, Cresson's conversion stirred up much debate among the leading rabbis of the time and led to lengthy discussions in their halachic literature. Shortly after the conversion, Cresson returned to Philadelphia. Though Cresson was overjoyed to be reunited with his beloved family, the feeling was definitely not mutual. In fact, his family was shocked by his conversion, and tensions between them escalated until his family finally decided to take him to court on the supposed claim that Cresson had become insane and was therefore unable to further manage his fiscal affairs.